Good morning. How is everybody? Yes? If you're sitting here, I have no idea who you are because it's a really bright light. So I'm a little unprepared to speak to you today, but that's okay. This is the stack of brief that I've got, and I could read it all to you if you want me to, but I don't think I'll do that. I think I'll start with a theme that really is something I get asked about a lot, whether I'm here in Fort Worth or I'm traveling on behalf of this great city across the United States. And I think on this topic quite a bit, and I know some of my fellow council members do as well. I think I saw Macy here. Hi, Macy. Good morning. I think about what makes a great city. And for each of you, that answer might be somewhat unique, but I would bet you that the themes that I believe create a great city are oftentimes the same things that matter to you. And those are the most important topics, I think, in this State of the City this morning that I wanted to give you. The city of Fort Worth is 175 years old. And I often joke, maybe because I have a teenager at home, a 14-year-old anybody got a teenager like baby giraffes? Like they're just growing so much every day they wake up. They've grown a few more inches. They don't know quite how their body's handled. Fort Worth's a little bit like that. We're in our adolescence. This phase of growing up and where our city is headed is incredibly exciting, especially to those of us that love Fort Worth so dearly. Maybe we're a little scared about it. Like, what does it mean to grow up so quickly as now one of the fastest growing cities in the country, about to be 1 million people, and just past the city of Austin in population, now the 4th largest city in Texas? What makes a great city, and what do we want to be when we grow up? So for 175 years, Fort Worth was largely this city, and it's fitting that it's the motto of the USS Fort Worth, a city of grit and tenacity, a city that really should never have been successful on the banks of the Trinity River, created by true Western pioneers, and that Western pioneering cowboy spirit still absolutely permeates across the city of Fort Worth, whether you consider yourselves more cowboy or more culture. It really doesn't matter. So what makes a great city, and what are the things that as your mayor are most important to me, and what you should require of a mayor, in my opinion? The prioritization of the issues that matter most. At its foundation is public safety, always should be, and I think really in Fort Worth, it's why we've been so successful and why people want to move here, and as I've often used the phrase, voted with their feet time and time again. At the foundation is public safety, community safety, and yes, it starts with your police department. An emphasis that in many ways was an interesting maybe battle or disagreement at times, especially when I took office in 2021. If you think back, just after the summer of 2020, then you led into the country trying to recover from COVID that fall. Then a very contentious presidential election in 2020 led into 2021. And many of you may have heard me say this, I had to decide to run for mayor on January 7th, right after January 6th. Not the easiest conversation with David Parker. You know what sounds fun? Let's run for mayor. And I mention all that backdrop because when I took office in 2021, it's hard for me to believe that was 4 years ago, the concept of public safety, how to support your police officers, how to be pro-police and pro-community at the same time was difficult. And I'm very proud to tell you that yes, because of my leadership, the leadership of city management, really important discussions with city council members, over the last 3 years, this council has unanimously voted to support increases in police officers and investment every single year, to get to the point that by 2026, we hope to be fully staffed as a Fort Worth Police Department. I can tell you that no other large city in the country will be able to say that. And it's in large part thanks to the leadership of Chief Neil Noakes, who many of you may have met or gotten to know over the years, and who announced his retirement this coming summer. Please give that gentleman a round of applause. So at the bedrock, of course, is the historic increases we've seen in the police department. We've also had a huge emphasis in our fire department, right-sizing the department to the city that is now 350 square miles, a community of incredibly diverse need. And when it comes to our fire department, it was not just in the infrastructure needs, yes, building new fire stations from Walsh to South Fort Worth, but also in making sure they had the men and women in uniform they needed to respond to any disaster, any emergency, whether it was a fire in your home or a 911 call for an emergency call. But pretty quickly, within about a year of taking office, we realized that our MedStar ambulance service, which is called a MPO on the outside, they were struggling for a variety of reasons and had been. Fun fact, at the time, this was 2022 when the first workforce study was done, you could make more money as a Buc-ee's cashier than you could as an entry-level EMT in Tarrant County. That's unsustainable, right? And so for a variety of reasons, we undertook a task force approach to this issue. It is expensive to take on MedStar ambulance service within a city. Most large cities had already moved toward that model. Councilmember Hill and a few other council members I appointed to a public safety task force, emergency task force around ambulance services. And we made the decision to bring ambulance services into the city of Fort Worth as a part of the Fort Worth Fire Department. And that full integration will be complete this summer by June or July. A significant move, over 600 additional employees move into the city of Fort Worth, or EMT and paramedics. They essentially become what's called single role or dual role. So there'll be single role, meaning they are EMTs, paramedics, or they're dual role, which is they're firefighters and paramedics or EMTs. All of your Fort Worth firefighters, by the way, are all dual role, have been for generations of firefighters. And so this is a new approach. So you're going to start to see Fort Worth ambulances all across the city of Fort Worth that serve not just the city of Fort Worth, but also our member cities across Tarrant County. A significant investment to create an EMS system that we believe will decrease and already has decreased response times and making sure that our growth is responsible. The other piece around public safety that shouldn't surprise you, but maybe it does, many of you have ever heard of the broken windows theory before, right? When a home is not cared for, when the windows are broken, when the community is not invested in, it makes a huge impact in overall public safety. And we've seen this to be true year over year here in the city of Fort Worth, and making those investments has been very important to us. So it starts with neighborhood investments, our neighborhood improvement program that we started in 2016 in Stop 6, just south of $2 million invested in that neighborhood that now has turned into a housing choice grant of over $30 million, a redevelopment of Cavill Place, and now over $400 million in private development happening in Stop 6 because of that small $2 million seed fund. But we've also decided that we wanted the city of Fort Worth to be beautiful. We wanted the city to be clean. We created an environmental services department that did not exist in the city of Fort Worth, and largely in part because the city council believed in this vision, and we were hearing from residents about your interest in making sure Fort Worth was clean, safe, and beautiful for all families here in our city. It is amazing to see the hard work done. Just in the last year, you've seen our code or environmental services team working together clean up over 1,300 homeless camps across the city of Fort Worth, 15 million pounds of litter off the streets of Fort Worth, and put into action our 12 street sweepers cleaning over 8,100 miles per year of street lanes. Those things may not sound sexy, but I promise you, as your mayor, they are very exciting to me. Because as I started this theme of what makes a great city, these are things that make a great city do well. Moving from public safety and this theme of growth that many of us talk about quite often is how do you keep up with the growth we're experiencing in the city of Fort Worth? By the way, it's not just our city, it's across North Texas. We expect DFW to pass the Chicago metro region within the next few years to become the third largest metro region in the entire country. Just this next few weeks, and on Thursday, tomorrow, today's Wednesday, right? Yeah, Thursday, we're announcing our new CEO of DFW International Airport as Sean Donahue makes retirement happen for he and his family. And that airport is now the third busiest airport in the entire world. All of this growth and opportunity, and so a big topic always is infrastructure. What does it look like to make sure you could move, for us, move 1 million, move 1 million people across the city of Fort Worth. I won't bore this audience this early with transportation infrastructure discussion or how many billions of dollars are currently on the ground. It's over $3 billion, by the way. And the coordination that it takes between TxDOT and Tarrant County and other cities, your North Central Texas Council of Governments, your state of Texas, and your federal government. It's incredibly complicated, but we have wonderful leaders that have focused in this space for decades to make sure that North Texas continues to grow and thrive and not be in complete gridlock. And it does take a tremendous amount of your tax dollars. When we go to bond election, likely in the spring of 2026 or fall of 2026, depending on the wisdom of the Texas legislature, we will likely have a bond just around $800 million, and almost 70% of that bond will all be in transportation infrastructure. That's the capital need of being one of the fastest growing cities in the entire country. When you also think about growth, though, and this is a priority for me, I grew up in a small town on a cattle ranch in Hico, Texas, and I often tell this story to ground you in sort of what matters to me and how informative my upbringing was for me. I was outdoors all of the time, right? Having access to beautiful landscape was not something, honestly, I probably took it for granted. And here we are in the city of Fort Worth, and now I get to govern over the largest, fastest growing city in the country. I've already given you all the statistics. We're only half developed. 350 square miles and only half developed, and we lose 50 acres per week to development, to concrete in this city every single week. So we started looking at internally, what do we want to be when we grow up? And when I delivered a State of the City 2 years ago, I announced the creation of Good Natured, which is our first conservatorship organization really focused on conservation and stewardship of the environment in a nonprofit capacity on the private side to really come alongside the public sector in the city of Fort Worth. Because of all the growth we're seeing, what do we want to be when we grow up? What does it mean to be a great city? And for me, and I used this quote during my State of the City because my mom loves Joni Mitchell, I don't want to pave paradise. And I don't think you do either. The access to parks and open space across the city of Fort Worth, the over almost 200 miles of trails along the Trinity River, our tree canopy, all of this, if we don't plan today, I promise you it will be gone 10 to 20 years from now. And I don't want that on my watch, and so we've created Good Natured and created a few high-level goals. The first is to conserve or protect at least 10,000 acres in the city of Fort Worth over the next 5 years, and we're well on our way. Over 1,000 acres conserved just in the last year, and I had a meeting yesterday with our green space champion, Allison Dockery, a landscape architect who works for the city of Fort Worth now, and we've got great plans in the future about what that looks like. Preserving our riparian waterways, important for water quality and flood mitigation, what stewardship means in every single yard across the city of Fort Worth. Because at a high level, my goal is to make city of Fort Worth the best parks and open space system in the entire country. And I know we can do it with the right stewardship and the trees we're planting today that we may never sit under, which is really, really exciting. I've joked, but I keep saying it out loud because I really am serious. When I'm done being mayor, I just want to be the chair of the Parks Board. That's all I want to do. Because I really feel so strongly that this is something that will set Fort Worth apart for generations to come. And we will be wiser for it when you think back in time about how quickly we were growing in the city. The last topic I'm going to shift to is get you outside the city of Fort Worth and the building and the infrastructure around running a city is a topic that I've taken on really before I was mayor. I've worked in education policy and led where I can for the last 10 years. Before I was your mayor, I led an organization called the Tarrant 2 and 3 Partnership, or T3, in education that is still very successful today. But let me give you some troubling statistics and some things that are incredibly encouraging around education. When I talk about education, it's the entire spectrum. It's really from prenatal, from the time a mother is pregnant with that child, and yes, prenatal care is incredibly vital to the long-term success of that little boy or little girl, and growing into career. Making sure that we're growing Fort Worthians that are successful in college, career, or military is becoming increasingly more important and unfortunately more complex. The state of Texas is now the 8th largest economy in the entire world. Think about that in GDP. And yet we sit towards the bottom in educational outcomes in the United States of America, right? With all the growth, all the import of jobs, every Fortune 500 company that moves to Texas, and yet our education outcomes have remained stagnant. I don't have control over what they do at the state level, but I do have a say in what happens around education in the city of Fort Worth. So a few things we've done successfully and the things we're working on into the future. The first is a continuation of my work with T3, was creation of a Mayor's Council on Workforce and Education. I tapped Tom Harris. Many of you know Tom, who was a longtime CEO of Alliance Airport with Hillwood. He made the mistake of telling me he was retiring. I said, no, you're not. And so he's been an incredible chair of this group to put together business and industry around the table to really influence what K through 12 intersection looks like with post-secondary. And we've made some great inroads over the last few years. In fact, just last week, we celebrated over 300 high school students from all 12 ISDs in the city of Fort Worth who graduated with a credential or a degree at the same time they graduated high school, which was incredibly exciting. And I invited just a rock star, badass woman to join me on stage. Her name is Monessa, but she goes by her call sign, Siren. She is an F-35 test pilot at Lockheed. First woman ever to hold that job. She's the ripe age of 38 years old, a mom of a 6-year-old, Air Force Academy graduate. And when I joked with her on stage, I said, please tell me you don't show up at career day for your kid. Because every single parent, of course, would be like, yeah, of course. She gets all the credit. She did tell me she hasn't gone career day, but she has flown over her daughter's soccer game, just to throw a little bit out there. It was a great conversation. The point was to inspire these kids and recognize them for their accomplishments. Think about that, graduating with an associate's degree from Tarrant County College at the same time you're graduating high school. And many of us think, man, that's amazing. That should be the standard. That's where your economy is headed. By 2036, 80% of your jobs in North Texas will require a post-secondary credential. And yet today, if you're a low-income student in Tarrant County, only 13% of our kids, 13% of low-income kids make it within 6 years of high school graduation to a post-secondary credential. They get stuck in the doom spiral. Education is the greatest equalizer, and it's something we should all focus on. You've probably also seen the news. I've focused considerably around Fort Worth ISD, which is our largest ISD in the city of Fort Worth. About half of our students, just north of 70,000 students, attend Fort Worth ISD. And candidly, for years, I've worked with the district, and nothing was changing. And then this fall, it was very interesting, despite best efforts quietly to steward the district and the superintendent at the time, nothing was changing. And I joked that it felt like junior high girls that just talked about each other behind each other's back and no one actually did anything, right? And so I gathered a group of wonderful community leaders that were willing to sign a letter with me and stand to the school board and say enough's enough. And since that time, they've made significant changes, including the appointment of Dr. Karen Molinar as their superintendent. Dr. Molinar, in my opinion, is the right leader at the right time for the school district. She has shifted budget, and budget tells your story, right, where your focus is in your business, and for her, it's educating our kids around literacy and the efforts to change student outcomes for the better. She has a long way to go. Fort Worth ISD is the lowest performing urban district in the state of Texas. And last week, A through F ratings were finally announced from the 2022-2023 school year. And Commissioner Morath has two choices when a district's been on that list for that long. He takes the district over or he closes schools. He's in the middle of that deliberation process right now. That's how serious it is, an F-rated school district. I share that with you to level set, but also to really give you hope. It is about leadership. When I think about a great city, you have to have great educational opportunities for every single student in Fort Worth. And that has not been true for far too long. You have campuses, over 50 campuses that are rated F in Fort Worth ISD. You have campuses that have been F-rated for a decade, some for 20. They might have come on the list, off the list. Imagine you're a mom, a single mom, that has no other choice but to send your kid to that neighborhood school, and that school has been failing for 20 years. Not in my city, and it shouldn't be okay with you either, quite frankly. So my request to you is for you to support Dr. Molinar, know what her strategic plan is. You don't have to go to the school board meetings. In fact, I wouldn't recommend it. But you could watch online the snippets you want to. Most Star Telegram and Fort Worth Report have been covering the news there. Many of you may have kids or grandkids that attend or have attended Fort Worth ISD, but rest assured it matters. Shifting for Fort Worth ISD, it's been really interesting as well. One thing that was not on my bingo card was a really foolish school board at Keller ISD that thought, you know, it'd be fun. I'm going to wake up today and decide we're just going to split the district down the middle. We're going to split it. We're going to segregate the school based on eco-dis and high language learning and give the poor schools over here, and we're just going to create our own district. It was a really bad idea. And fortunately, a variety of people, including myself, rallied the best way we could to use our bully pulpits, and they pulled back that decision. Keller has always been one of our higher performing districts, but it's been incredibly disruptive to that area of our community as well. K through 12 is one integral piece, but you also have to focus on post-secondary. And there are I need to pull this up because there's some really amazing work happening. First of all, I love the Aggies, I love the Longhorns, I especially love it when they compete, and they are competing fiercely right now for the city of Fort Worth. Texas A&M North Campus is an incredible development. Currently 3 buildings promised. Their law and education building is currently under construction. Their next business innovation hub will be incredibly exciting. They're moving visual arts and production into the city of Fort Worth with another building near Lancaster. I have often joked that before it's all said and done, it'll be the Texas Aggies present the city of Fort Worth in downtown Fort Worth. It is totally, I know there's always one. I'm married to an Aggie, so I'm prepared myself for that. Including Texas A&M campus, including the Fort Worth Convention Center and other development in downtown, over $3 billion of development downtown Fort Worth, which is incredibly exciting. Very few downtowns across the United States can say that right now, and we're really thankful for it, of course. Then you had the Longhorns come along, or really the UT system, UTA, and the Mavericks are building UTA West at Walsh, which is a considerable investment. We just broke ground a few weeks ago. Dr. Jennifer Cowley is an incredible leader, an $800 million investment in West Fort Worth. All of this competition also encourages our anchor institution, TCU, Horned Frogs. Their 10-year strategic plan that's been announced by Dr. Pullen is incredibly exciting, and it's not just about students on campus, but it's about widening their imprint across the city of Fort Worth. And our Horned Frogs are continuing to lean into their success long term. You have Texas Wesleyan, of course, anchoring in East Fort Worth, and they're in leadership from Dr. Emily Messer, which is incredibly exciting. And then Tarrant County College and Tarleton that continue to grow and thrive. All of that competition around higher education is really because across DFW, we have almost 400,000 students enrolled in higher education institutions. Number 1 in Texas by a long shot. And I think about the promise of a great city and what matters to each of us. Higher education should continue to be at the forefront of that. In closing, and then I think I'm going to take questions. It's an exciting time to be in leadership and in public policy and politics, but it's also so strange, right? Macy and I are really close friends and running together, and I think I said this yesterday to her. I said, I just always pissing everybody off, right? Because when you're a mayor, a good mayor, in my opinion, you're not Republican, you're not Democrat, you're just doing the right thing for your citizens. And you have to weigh out every single decision, and every single Tuesday is some new battle royale to face. And because our politics are so partisan today, the proverbial they, really want you in a box, right? Where do you fit? And so I encourage you as leaders, and why you take the time to gather in a space like this one, really think about the way our partisanship has impacted everything, our daily lives, our businesses, our relationships, but we are largely more similar than we are different, even in politics. And I have found, as your mayor, in the last several years, that the issues that really matter have nothing to do with whether you like elephants or donkeys. It really is about what you think is best and how you steward those decisions, and try to attempt, as business leaders, right, build consensus, usually bring people to the middle, trying to hear things out. And so my promise to you, as long as I'm in this office, is to continue to prioritize those things, mediate where possible, attempt to find compromise, but always uphold the integrity of our office and the mayor's office, and also how important it is to me to be a good example for what I think is the best city in America, and how fortunate we are to live in Fort Worth today as we continue to grow and thrive into the future. Thank you for letting me spend a few minutes with you this morning. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Mayor Parker,
Yes.
Thank you for coming. I'm back here.
Okay,
In the light you can't see.
perfect.
Can you talk a little bit about our transportation? As we talk about infrastructure, there's been some budget controversy with us in Dallas and the TRE and the Tex Rail, as well as what the future holds for high-speed rail.
Yeah. So talk about transit, public transit mobility issues in North Texas. I've talked about a lot about the growth in DFW. Long-term goal, and the North Central Texas Council of Governments and our RTC is studying this right now, we have got to get to one regional transit system across DFW. It's not sustainable to have Trinity Metro, DART, and DTA. They work really well together and coordinate, and Rich Andreski is a great leader for Trinity. I'm talking long-term. Like, what does it look like long-term to have a regional transit agency? The DART controversy is quite interesting, and I can see both sides, honestly. You have member cities that pay in considerable amount of their tax dollars, apportioned through sales tax. Mostly the cities that have been the loudest and most vocal have been Plano-Frisco area. They don't feel like they're getting their fair share. And as someone that oversees the stewardship of your tax dollars, I get it. It's a valid argument, right? But we are behind the 8 ball when it comes to regional transit in a meaningful way. And if you look at ridership specific to DART, there's been quite a bit of emphasis around that as well. So, for us, Trinity Metro in Tarrant County, I think Rich and his team have done an excellent job, really back to basics, simplifying routes. For instance, the Orange Line that now opened to get you from the stockyards to downtown. They're opening the Blue Line. I think today maybe is the opening of that with Downtown Fort Worth Inc.'s annual luncheon. And a real emphasis on what the future looks like. We did a transit study in the city of Fort Worth that Jay Chapa, before he was nominated to be our city manager, led that as chairman, really focused on what does transit look like to move people from an entertainment district perspective, a people mover system. These are incredibly expensive projects. I mean, as an example, really to get you from the stockyards to downtown, any kind of streetcar, light rail system is $800 million. You don't have that kind of money running around. So it takes a lot of coordination from the federal government. The problem usually at a national level, and this is understandable, but every 4 years administrations change. And so priorities change. And it's a little bit like playing whack-a-mole to see where you're going to end up. High-speed rail has continued to be controversial. It started an issue around landowner rights, eminent domain between Houston and Dallas. Now there seems to be quite a big emphasis on making sure it's privately funded. Amtrak got thrown in there. I'm still very optimistic, and I think if you've traveled to Europe or to Asia lately, they've got this thing figured out. America is going to build high-speed rail. There's even talk of moving money from California over I think it's $5 billion that has been unspent in their high-speed rail system moving to Texas. Everybody else is moving to Texas. I say, why not move your money? That sounds great. But the most important thing and why I have been vocal is to make sure if and when high-speed rail is built, Fort Worth is at the table, that we're not forgotten, and you don't just get Dallas to Houston, and we have to get the connection. And honestly, you have to get the Texas Triangle long-term, Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, and then over to Houston. Hope that answers your question somewhat. Yes, ma'am.
So we're in the travel and tourism space. We have we have 1 million people living here. What about the tens of millions of people that are visiting Fort Worth?
Yeah.
What's your thought on what's happening there?
So you know this because you're in this industry. In many ways, the city of Fort Worth.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question was just around travel and tourism, the importance of our economy here locally. In many ways, our visitor economy has driven our business economy over the last 20 years in Fort Worth. And Visit Fort Worth, under great leadership under Bob Jamieson and his team, have made huge inroads in what it looks like to be an attractive city for business and recreational tourism in the city of Fort Worth. Just as an example, the Fort Worth Stockyards now, 11 million people visit the Fort Worth Stockyards every single year, which is truly amazing. And that's just one particular location. You continue to see hotels pop up across the city of Fort Worth, most notably, of course, the Crescent and the Bowie House, our first 2 5-star hotels to complement the Drover and the Stockyards, and then many in between, of course, in downtown as well, anchored by what really was our first attraction in the Omni Hotel that continues to be our main convention center location as well. The convention center expansion is a big piece of that. We're under construction for phase 1. Voters approved in that hot text election phase 2. So that will allow us to bring conventions and visitors here in a larger volume. We were losing out to other locations simply because our convention center wasn't big enough. So all in all, we're on the right track. And what I love about bringing people to Fort Worth for the first time, and many of you may have seen the commercial that Visit Fort Worth did called The Unexpected City. We are an unexpected city. I don't know if you've brought people here, family or friends or business allies that come to Fort Worth for the first time, and they usually say that, man, I didn't expect to like it this much, right? I didn't know about Fort Worth. I didn't know you had world-class museums. And so we just have to keep leaning into that, and I've always been appreciative of Bob, Mitch, and that entire team of what they've created. Not to mention, I'd be remiss thinking about film tourism and the film economy here, film and television. I mean, I've been to Austin now 4 times to testify on film incentives, which is now really close to the finish line, because we're poised to be really most successful because of film and television, tourism and business. It's both that comes in. And I've joked that when Sam Elliott was starring in 1883 in the Stockyards, I expected women to line up for Tim McGraw. It was not. It was Sam Elliott. Y'all, it was like going to a Dwight Yoakam concert. If you've ever been to a Dwight Yoakam concert, the women were lined up wall to wall to see Sam Elliott in person. And I joke about that, but it's a real thing for people to come and see our city, and then, of course, the economy that comes from film and television as well. Anybody else? Yes?
My name's Samuel Bistrin. I'm the owner of Roma Boots, and I manufacture for 15 years rain boots and other footwear in China. With the tariffs, that's obviously impacted my business drastically. Yeah. I've considered manufacturing here in the U.S. Other than any federal incentives, does the city or do you plan on offering anything for manufacturers that have produced overseas?
So we already do, actually, and you've seen some onshoring over the last 10 years, and I don't know off the top of my head, honestly, what percentage of our incentive packages have gone to companies that largely look like they're onshoring, but I can give you really good examples. I mean, one in particular is MP Materials, which is a mining operation out of California. They're consolidating mining operations and moving all their battery manufacturing here to the city of Fort Worth. It's in the Alliance project. It was a significant incentive, largely because of this is well before tariffs, really understanding the importance. So it's always worth conversation with our economic development team to see what the ROI looks like for us. We have a pro forma that we utilize, but this continues to be a topic, candidly, that we're having internally about what shifts we may need to make, because the city of Fort Worth, from an advanced manufacturing perspective, has always been an industry leader. We also are lucky to have Alliance Airport, which is really considered an inland port hub. Obviously, DFW Airport, BNSF, robust rail line between Tower 55 and BNSF headquartered here, significant presence by UP. All that to say, manufacturing makes sense here. So it's worth a conversation if it's something you're really looking at seriously and needing assistance with. And the 4th Economic Development Partnership, led by Robert Allen, we recruited Robert from Austin. He used to run the Save Texas EDP to come to Fort Worth. He's wonderful. And those are usually the first people I introduce folks to, like just brainstorm with Robert a little bit. What would that look like? What are you needing? Do you need connections with other companies that maybe have done this before, or maybe have a similar plant that's in North Texas already that you could partner with to just see if it would work for you? And I'm happy to do that. The tariff conversation, I mean, I'm not going to try to, I'm not an economist. Who knows what the hell's going to happen? And I don't think the administration does day to day, right? But this is interesting and important for this audience to know. We do have help from a business perspective that understands our economy. Ross Perot Jr. is soon to be the U.S. Chamber of Commerce president coming in this summer. And he's spending a tremendous amount of time advocating to the administration, other business leaders in Washington about what he's seen, not just at his wonderful success at Alliance through Hillwood, but just more globally. And so I think my hope is that utilizing his expertise and some of our leadership here in North Texas, our voice will be loud where it needs to be, and we can be constructive in the argument around what does tariff change look like in the United States, from NAFTA or otherwise. And so I'm still optimistic. I try to be, at least. Yes? Is that Stephen? You can't ask a question, Stephen.
It's a softball.
Okay.
If you wanted
Yes. So you should now, you missed early voting, it's over. It was last day was yesterday, it was last day, but you need to vote on Saturday, May 3rd. How many of you voted yet, if you haven't? Oh, guys, perfect example. All of you have to vote, Saturday, May 3rd. You just have to. I don't care, you can vote, you cannot vote for me. If I don't win, you should move. Do your research, it's not that funny. But there are important ballots, very, very important elections up and down the ballot. Actually, Stephen's wife, Skylar, stepped up to run for the Tarrant Regional Water District. Water District's an important one. There are 3 people you have to vote for on that ballot. So do your research. There are 3 candidates that I'm supporting. Stephen, Leah, Jonathan. Skylar, Leah, Jonathan. Veronica Law is running for Tarrant. I'm just giving you my opinions. You don't have to do what I say, but you'd have to vote. That's the most important thing. And when I ran for election in 2021, historic election, 1 round into a runoff, the most votes we'd ever seen in the city of Fort Worth. You know, people voted 85,000 people in a million to be your mayor. It's pretty amazing. So thank you for that toss, Stephen. I appreciate you. Appreciate it. But as I close, poor Stephen had to camp out with my husband this weekend. And how many boys were there? Like 28-year-olds? Yeah. 28-year-olds and 20 dads. Who do you think was responsible? All the kids came home miraculously. I have no idea how. We're so glad you're safe at home. Thank you all very much for the time. I know that you could choose any speaker to come with you. I hope today was somewhat informative. I'll hang around for a minute to answer questions. I have no idea what your rest of your morning holds, but thank you all for having me. Appreciate it.